Hey, what's going on, guys? To complete the trio of bad guy mobile suits in 1/100 scale from Gundam Seed, here we've got the Forbidden Gundam. Awesome. I can't wait for this. I really enjoyed the Calamity Gundam and the Raider Gundam, which again will remind you guys, I've never been a fan of the Raider Gundam, but that kit was awesome, so definitely check it out. Anyway, the Forbidden Gundam I have very high expectations for just because of how much I've enjoyed those previous two. Even though it's not master grade by name, these kits, in my opinion, are basically master grade kits, so definitely worth checking out if you guys are fans of master grade kits, or if you're a fan of the design, obviously. But let's go ahead and get into it and we'll see what it's like. So once again, with this one, like we've seen in the past, we've got some awesome box art here on the front. I gotta say, not a really big fan of the font they're used for the full mechanics line, but the artwork's super detailed in all the little bits of weathering and lighting effects, everything going on there. Looks super cool. The Gundam looking very mean with its big massive scythe weapon there, front and center. It's a cool design. On the ends of the box, you got just the titling and the box art cropped there like so. And on the one side, the fully built and painted model there, front and back there, is going to have that sort of quasi-transformation there, and we'll see that here in the gimmick point. So kind of how the torso kind of folds up and the backpack folds over the head like that. So there's a look at some of the gimmicks we've got there with like the binders as well. Everything on here is in Japanese and in English, which is nice. And then a look at some of the other details about the kit and everything. So it all looks very cool. Around on the other side of the box, there it is in the transformed state, looking super awesome. A couple of detail shots there, and in the untransformed state, or just like normal Gundam mode there with that big massive weapon. So again, everything looks very cool with this kit. Popping open the box here, we're gonna take a look at all of the runners in just a moment. There we got some sticker decals there, it looks like. But first, I want to take a look at the instruction manual. So the front of the manual is featuring the same artwork from the front of the box. The back side is going to have some more information here for us. The painting guides there in Japanese and in English, and then information about the Forbidden Gundam here also in Japanese and in English there, and about the pilot, Shani, there as well. A little bit here about some of the other different features of the mobile suit, some of the weapons and everything you've got there, all in Japanese and in English as well. Very cool. On the inside front page there, we've got our parts list, some basic construction tips, and then right into the construction on this one. And it looks like it does give you the breakdown of like which part. It looks like, for example, we're building like the arms first, and it tells you which runners you're going to need here for the arm. Also tells you the color of the runners, so it does all make it very convenient for you. Also shows you a gimmick point, so you can like keep that in mind as you're building the arms. And then down here for the chest unit as well. Is that something that they've done in the past couple releases? I'm not sure if I remember seeing like gimmick points pointed out in the manual. That's kind of something that it looks like it's not showing necessarily for every step, but there's some along the way where it's pointing out some of the gimmick points, which is kind of cool to see that as just a reminder as you're building the kit. And then once you get down to the end after the transformation, at the very last back page here is our marking location guide, which is going to all be right there for you. It looks like a lot of markings to go around on this kit. Taking a look at the marking sheet here of sticker decals, you can see we've got mostly white, some red, and some gray there as well. Quite a few of those that you can put on the kit for some added detail. And it looks like we've got a few foil stickers here as well, but emphasis on a few, as it's really only for the eyes and a couple of cameras, and that's it for our foil stickers. Another kind of extra bit that we have in here is these two nylon cords here, each measuring about 20 centimeters in length and probably about 3 centimeters in diameter, just to give you guys a look at the size of these, and kind of like this really dark green color. So these will add a really nice bit of detail to the kit. Getting into the runners then, starting off with runner A. This is going to be a nice big 4-color runner here. We've got some red at the top, this kind of medium green color here, which is going to be the main color of the mobile suit. This molded silver here for a couple of the parts there for the weapon, basically, so that'll be cool. The weapon blades and pointed parts are going to be in that nice molded silver. And then the yellow for the kit is this very much kind of like greenish yellow kind of there for the yellow accent parts. Runners B1 and then B2, which is going to be a copy of this section right here, is going to be in, I guess, what this is actually probably the main color of the mobile suit, is in this kind of more minty color of green there. Looks very nice. Runners C1 and C2 here are in this very dark gray, basically black color here. Then we've got kind of all of our inner frame runners here in this medium gray. So first of all, runner D here, I just want to show you guys some of the detail we have on here. This is one of the reasons why I say these are essentially master grades, even though they're not technically master flash grades, but I mean, look at that detail. That's for the underside of the skirt parts there, for example. And this runner is labeled for the 1/100 scale Forbidden Gundam, but if we take a look at runner E1 and E2 here, these are from 2021, carrying the full mechanics 1/100 scale GAT frame runner here. So this is basically inner frame that we've seen with the Calamity Gundam reused here for this Gundam as well, which makes sense. But then runner F is back to Forbidden specific inner frame kind of parts here, and again, just a ton of really great detail on this. Next up, runners G1 and G2 here have one section copied up there at the top. Otherwise, we have all of our parts here in dark green, which does look really cool. Then runners H1 and H2 is in this really dark gunmetal kind of color, so it has a nice kind of slightly metallic shine to it, which looks really nice. And last but certainly not least, runner I here in clear blue for our parts for the head and in the kind of backpack clear parts there as well. And that's it. And alright guys, here's the kit all built up, big and chunky and bulky as it is. It is an awesome kit. I really enjoyed building this. Check out the live stream if you guys missed that to watch the building process, because there was a lot of things that I pointed out in the live stream that I'm not going to have time to point out every single little detail about the construction in today's review, but there was a lot of things that I talked about whilst I was building it in the live stream that I think you guys might find interesting if you're interested in checking out this kit. But there's a lot of really great construction going on here with this one. Really cool design, a lot of great detail, and overall just a very awesome kit, I think. So definitely worth checking out. Let's go ahead and start off with some of its very few accessories. Now, one thing of course you guys will notice is that I am using this stand just to help it to stand up, because obviously, as if it were going to be any surprise to anyone, the backpack is very heavy. You could get it to stand up on its own, and there's actually a helpful trick that you can use to do that. I'll show you guys in just a second. But depending on the pose, in just a straight standing pose like this, it's going to be difficult. So just to make sure the kit wasn't falling over, I was using just this little stand here to help it stand. Unfortunately, it doesn't include any kind of stand. Probably would have been a good candidate for a kit to include an action base, but let's go ahead and check out our other little option parts here. We have these option fingers that you can swap out there in the hands for holding the weapon in the left and the right side, and that's all we have for our option hands, other than what we've got on the kit, which are also kind of like holding hands, but these are not made for holding its gigantic scythe weapon. We do also have the action base adapter, which we'll certainly need for putting this up on an action base. And then we've got its main weapon, which is the heavy scythe, which is very long. The blade folds out like that. The blade itself is also quite long. The total length of the weapon is about 25.5 centimeters, and just the blade itself is about 15 centimeters long, which is about the height of a standard like HG kit, for example. Now you notice on the sides of the scythe we have these little connection points, and that is because this can connect onto the inside of the shields here. So it's kind of cool that you can store the weapon there in the side of the shield when not in use, but the other good use of that is that it can act as a bit of a tripod to help the kit to stand up on its own. Now the trouble is that it's going to be off to one side only, and it's still going to be a little wobbly, but here you can see I've got it standing up on its own now without the use of the base, because I have the scythe just barely touching the ground behind it there, and you can see it's still kind of a bit tricky, but anyway, it is a little trick that you can use. And that's it for the accessories. Now before I talk about the articulation, I want to separate the backpack because I want to talk a little bit more in depth just about the overall construction and details of the kit. The only stickers that we have are for the eyes and the head camera on the front and the head camera on the back. Now the only one that you really kind of need is the one on the back, because for the head, the eyes, and the top camera up there is a clear blue piece. You can opt to use the clear blue piece if you want. I just put the stickers on there just so you guys can see how it does look with the stickers on it, but just on the construction of the head here, really great color separation with that black piece on the inside, making the vents on the side of the head and the Vulcans. And you have separate pieces for the front for those black vents on the front of the face, so really nice color separation there. But that holds true throughout most of the kit here. You have separate parts for all of these little vent details inside and around here. Here in the front skirt, those gray bits of inner frame that poke through, and on the underside of the underskirt, all that really great detail up inside there, up behind the back skirt as well, all that really nice detail. And although you do see the pegs of the armor piece kind of poking through in the opposite way, as you can see some of the gray frame On the backside here, you can see some of that light green, but once painted, that's just going to blend in completely as just part of the detail of the underskirt there, so very nice. And on a quick note about seam lines, there are just not going to be any seam lines that you really need to worry about on this kit whatsoever. The way the head is constructed, it hides the seams. There's a little bit of a seam on the back of the head, but that's just hidden as a panel line right there. On the shoulders, the forearms, everything goes together in a way where there's just no seam lines on the kit at all. Here on the side of the leg, just have a detail line right there on the leg, the lower leg, I should say, here as well. Also, the way that the kit is constructed is just going to make it so easy and convenient to paint as well. If you guys are wanting to paint this kit, going through and putting the kit together, I could just tell that it's designed in a way so that you have all this really great construction and part separation, which is just going to make it so simple to paint this kit up if you did want to paint it. And it's nice that it's a full mechanics kit and not a master grade, and that it has less parts. I mean, obviously there's pros and cons to that, but one of the pros is that less parts is fewer parts to paint. But I, during the live stream build, compared this to an entry grade in that it does a lot with a little, even though it has fewer parts than if it were a master grade, for example. There's a lot of part separation and really great engineering of the parts that's just going to make it so simple to paint. Like, for example, here on the chest, this part around the vent at the top, this is a separate piece right here, so you can mask and paint the inside of that vent detail if you wanted to have that in like a silver or something, for example. Paint this part around the outside as a separate piece, pop that back over the top of there, and very easy. And that just holds true for so much of the kit here, just the way that the parts go together. It's going to be a really fun one to paint. And then of course, to talk a little bit about the backpack here, this is also super nice. You just have a ton of great detail, great color separation, everything on here also. No stickers, but you do have that clear part that catches the light quite nicely there, as you can see in the top of the transformed backpack. Really nice color separation for these details here on the top as well, for that yellow and red triangle detail there. This kind of vent around the top of the shield, the way that that goes together also is like color separated. It's kind of hard for me to show you guys right now, but again, if you refer to the live stream build, I showed it in detail, kind of how that goes together. And is really nice. But of course, the shields are connected onto this mechanical arm, which will fold out and give you plenty of posability. This hose part is really nice. There's no wire in it. I think it would be a good and very simple modification to just take a piece of wire and feed that through there, because then you can form and shape it. Right now, it just hangs loosely. It's just gonna go wherever it's gonna go. But if you put a malleable wire in through this hose part, then you could pose it in exactly whatever pose you wanted to. So very easy modification to make if you wanted to do that. The kind of rails here that will flip out to the front for when it's in its high-speed assault form, fold out just on a little ball joint mechanism there, and these parts rotate 90 degrees to open out like that. You kind of have to make sure you get them all straight, but again, nice color separation. This little bit of red here at the tip as well as a separate piece, so that's all really awesome. Around here in the back, even this separate part there for the thruster belt at the back. Great detail on the inside. You can rotate that around on a little ball joint there. That's kind of getting a bit into the articulation, but it looks to me that that hole in the back there is like about a standard 3mm peg size. I'm going to try this just with an action base adapter, which is about 3mm. It's slightly loose in there, but I think if you wanted to take some of like Bandai's effect parts, some of like the boost effect parts, that should fit in there pretty nicely to add some cool like effect parts into there if you wanted to. Those are sold separately, of course. But anyway, let's get into talking a little bit about the articulation. Now, the backpack, once it's connected onto this big massive peg there, is then going to fold down over the top of the torso, and you can see this whole part, like the sides of the torso here, will rotate up like that. And also when you do that, the head can be tucked down into the torso a little bit like that. Be careful of the V-fin, but the head tucks in there like that, so that when you bring the backpack up and over, it's covering the head very nicely. And I'll show you guys how the transformation looks in a bit once we get to that, once we take a look at some poses. But there you can see the head just pops back up automatically. You kind of have to like push it down sort of manually here when you're putting it down, but then when you rotate that back up, it'll bring the head back up nicely there like that. And I'm gonna keep the backpack off while we're going through the articulation here for the body, but this little like cowl bit there on the back of the head is a separate part that will move. So when you bring the head up, and you can point the head up nice and far, that won't get in your way, for a really nice range of upward movement there at the neck. That looks really nice. down very far here as well. In the torso section, you have a good bend forward, and fortunately no bend backwards, because this is one of those examples of the kit where you don't want it to bend backward at the stomach joint just because it has so much weight at the back. It's going to be just pulling it back all the time. So you want it to be able to bend forward a little bit, and it is pretty firm, does feel pretty tight, so it should be able to hold the weight of the backpack pretty good without just like bending back again like that. But we'll try that out. Can also bend the torso a little bit side to side here in the stomach section as well. Here in the waist, we have some really cool mechanisms. Number one is just going to be that the whole hip joint itself can rotate forward and back. That's not necessarily very special, that is kind of common, but what is kind of less common and very cool about this kit is that the whole hip joint, when you bend the ab crunch here, the stomach joint forward, you can also bring the hip joint forward as well. And you can see it makes that separation here between this part because the whole hip is kind of folding in forward as well for even further kind of accentuating the ab crunch basically. So that is really cool. The shoulder joint is also quite interesting in that you can pull this out and it kind of separates out away from the torso. You can pull this whole section out like that carefully. And then we have a joint which will allow for further up and down movement. You can also then kind of bend and rotate that, which will give you further forward and back movement. Now it looks a bit odd as it is like extended out like that far, but it will give you further range of movement really far to the front and back, and just the way that that shoulder joint is constructed is so unique. I've never built anything quite like it, and it goes back in just very nicely like that, so it's really cool how that pulls out of the torso there like that. I like that a lot. The shoulder armor itself moves up and down. The rest of the arm is kind of pretty standard here. It moves up like that. We have rotation at the top of the arm, double joint in the elbow. Then the wrist is interesting in that the wrist is just on a ball joint, but this whole wrist joint at the base can move forward and back like that, and that'll be really helpful for doing poses holding that big massive scythe, the ability to have some extra wrist movement there. Thumb is just on a ball joint, and as you guys saw, the fingers are just swappable, but also really nice detail here for the gun on the side of the arm, just to point that out. The front skirts, as you guys just saw a moment ago, can lift up very nicely. The side skirts as well are just attached via a small little ball joint there, so you can move those forward, back, up and down out of the way. The back skirt as well is movable. You can lift that up and down. The backpack is going to be a whole separate thing, but on the back of the torso, once you rotate that part up, these little flaps here will also move up and down right there, which is really cool. If we lift up the front skirt, the leg can come all the way up, really high up to the front, no issues there, and the knee joint is going to be really nice for a full 180 degrees essentially there at the knee. Now, no separation of this knee armor, that's just kind of the design of the lower leg, but there is something really cool here as well. If you take a look on the back, this also kind of lifts out and folds out like that, this vent here at the back of the leg, so it collapses down and folds out like so. This lower part is kind of separately articulated, but that whole kind of vent pops out when you lift that up like that. But the nice thing is that when you bend the knee, this collapses in like that, so it can get a full bend there at the knee. The ankle armor is attached via a small ball joint there at the front, up underneath the feet, nice full, nice detail there. And the really cool part is that where the ankle armor is connected onto the top of the foot is actually kind of part of the sort of frame of the foot, that when you bend the toe down, you get a little bit of movement there. This ankle armor kind of moves along with the foot. When you bend that down like that, you can see it's bending, moving the ankle armor there as well, which is really cool. So the foot itself will go up to about there, can point that all the way down to there, and then some nice side-to-side movement here as well. Pretty good range for that, so you could get a pretty wide stance while keeping the feet flat on the ground. But alright, so I think that covers everything. There was a lot to go over with this kit just because I really enjoyed this kit, and I really appreciate all that went into the design, the engineering of this kit. I think that there's a lot to be said for how nicely this kit is engineered, how nicely it goes together. And this is another one, just like the Calamity and the Raider before it, that it really kind of blurs the line between what is a master grade and what is not, although this is not technically a master grade by name. For all intents and purposes, it's very much similar to a master grade kit, especially on the outside. I mean, it definitely has the outward appearance, being very detailed and very part separated, color separated on the outside. It looks like a master grade. It can do basically everything that a master grade can do. It doesn't have an opening cockpit, or it doesn't have a pilot figure inside the cockpit. It doesn't have that. And I will admit the kit doesn't feel quite as solid as a master grade kit, which would have a more full inner frame. This does have like 80%, 90% of an inner frame for the most part. part, so it's basically, it has more of an inner frame than many of the earlier master grades in the line. But although it doesn't necessarily feel quite as solid, for me what it comes down to is how the kit looks and what it can do. And the kit looks great, and it can do everything that it needs to do. If you need to tighten a joint here or there or something like that with a little glue or something, that's not really a big deal in my personal opinion. That's up to you guys whether that really makes that much big of a difference to you. But as you can see here by taking a look at a few examples of some different poses with it, I think it's perfectly capable of doing anything that you're going to want it to do. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a base. I would highly recommend picking up a base with this kit just because obviously it's going to give you a lot more options, as it doesn't stand very well just on its own without one. Having it up on an action base is just really going to be ideal for displaying this kit, I think. But this really was a fun build, and I can highly recommend it to you guys, so definitely check it out. The link to USA Gundam Store will be down in the video description below if you guys want to check this kit out for yourself or anything else from Bandai. You guys know that you can check the link down in the video description. Check out this kit, and then let me know in the comments what you guys think will be coming up next in either the next full mechanics release, or if Bandai will go back to UC with the RE100 line. There's certainly a lot of things on my personal wish list, but I think what would make a lot of sense would be for Bandai to now move on to Gundam 00 and do the Throne series after they did the villain Gundam mobile suits here from the Seed line. I think it would make a lot of sense for them to move on to 00 and do those 3 Gundam enemy mobile suits there of the Thrones. And I would certainly be excited for those, but let me know your guys' thoughts, what you think might be coming out next in the line. But for now, that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for checking it out. If you have any further questions, do let me know in the comment section below. Check out the live build of this, and thank you guys all so much for all of your support, liking the video, commenting, subscribing. Anything helps, and I really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you again, and until next time, have a great day, guys. See y'all later. Bye-bye.